Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Najwa Qisthina with registration number 1701620055. In this time, allow me to present similar proposal about export competitiveness analysis of three leading Indonesian commodities to ASEAN. Okay, next is background. Each country has differences that include natural resources, weather conditions, and geography. And the relationship between the amount of production and income a country has a gap in economic cooperation for a country. So, if a country has more production of good or service, then export will be a potential type of country. But if a country has a higher income, the people of a country can potentially buy imported goods or services. Indonesia conducts international trade in the form of exports as a form of driving the economy, and contribution in ASEAN still low by 2022. Mineral fuels is 7%, animal or vegetables, fats and oils 35%, iron and steel 6%. This is a factor affecting exports, economic distance, exchange rates, and GDP. The first is factor economic distance. According the economic distance variable has a negative and significant effect according to findings of Maulana et al. 2023. The second factor, the exchange rates, and therefore any country involved in international trade can determine transaction costs by comparing the price in this country with the value of foreign currency. The third factor is gross domestic product or GDP. According to economics, GDP is one way to measure how what a country is doing in the economic part. So, export fluctuation and contribution are still low. It is necessary to analyze the competitiveness of Indonesians leading commodity export to ASEAN by looking at the factors involved in the research. Next, research questions. What is the research question? First, what is the competitiveness in the export of Indonesian three leading commodities to ASEAN? 2. Is there an influence between economic distance and export competitiveness of Indonesia's three leading commodities to ASEAN? 3. Is there an influence between the exchange rates and the export competitiveness of Indonesia's three leading commodities to ASEAN? 4. Is there an influence between gross domestic product or GDP on the export competitiveness of Indonesia's three leading commodities to ASEAN? So, based on the explanation of the research question, it can be said the research objectives are as follows is the 4th point. Okay, next is research benefits. Theoretical provide and add insight into knowledge about non-oil and gas competitiveness and its effects. Practically, a reference for stakeholders, especially the government, in assessing export competitiveness and implementing policies. This is supporting theory. First is international trade. About international trade, the exchange of goods and services between citizens of different countries based on mutual agreement. There are two theories of absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Okay, of absolute advantage is Adam Smith. This is theory by utilizing the division of labor to produce similar goods, a country can gain a clear trade advantage over country. A country will export a good if it can produce it much cheaper than other countries. And comparative advantage is the vertical. Countries will export goods that their labor produce relatively efficiently and will import goods that their labor produce relative inefficiency. So, this is export of three leading commodities. Commodities 27 is called. Commodity 15 is palm oil, hydrogenated animal fats and oils. Commodity 72 road products. About competitiveness. Competitiveness is closely related to export because it has an important role in the economics in Indonesia and state income and generate foreign exchange which can ultimately by the competitiveness in international trade. RCA or relative comparative advantage displays the relative concentration in one or more specific commodities or sectors. Next is gravity model. Gravity model says the international trade is influenced by distance, GDP, and exchange rates variables are also considered to have an influence on export. Next is swallowing theory about the economic distance. Economic distance is analyzing using gravity model calculation shows a strong negative effect of distance on international trade. Two is exchange rate. Foreign currency issues to donate a list of price in one country expressed in another country currency. Gross domestic product or GDP, a way to measure how well a country is doing the economic part. This is relevant research about para Zayanamaji 2021. Real GDP per capita and exchange rates variable have a positive and significant effect. Furthermore, economic distance has negative and significant effect. This is theoretical framework. 1. Each country has difference that cause fulfillment limitation. 2. Abundant production is export, high income is import. In non-oil and gas exports, Indonesia has their leading commodities that contribute, namely mineral fuels, animal or vegetable fats and oils, and iron and steel. 4. Obstacles such as a contribution in the ASEAN market that cannot be said to be superior, low competitiveness, and fluctuation in Indonesian export volume. So, it is necessary to analyze the competitiveness of Indonesian leading commodity export to ASEAN by looking at the factors involved in the research. This is a research hypothesis. The first is Indonesia has competitiveness and export of Indonesia's three leading commodities to ASEAN. 2. There is an influence between economic distance and export competitiveness of Indonesia's three leading commodities to ASEAN. 3. There is an influence between the exchange rates and the export competitiveness of Indonesia's three leading commodities to ASEAN. 4. There is an influence between gross domestic product or GDP and the export competitiveness of Indonesians leading communities to ASEAN. This is research methods. Unit of analyzing the export competitiveness of three leading commodities by looking at the magnitude of the influence of relative variables. Population. For the population in this study are ASEAN countries. Sample. The sample used probability sampling, purposive sampling technique, namely ASEAN 5. Data collection technique using an Comtrade World Bank website. Research methods. For research variable, export commodities, export competitiveness, economic distance, exchange rate, and gross domestic product. Type of panel data approach. The first is common effect model, fixed effect model, random effect model. To use types of panel data approach, 2 selection tests. 3 selection tests are first, cow test, 2, house mount test, 3, Ranger multiplier test. Okay, about the cow test. Cow test in selecting about used in determining the most appropriate choice between common effect model or fixed effect model. For Hausman test, in selecting the most between fixed effect model or random effect model. And Ranger multiplier test is selecting about the choice between common effect model or random effect model. This is classical assumption test. Classical assumption testing in the data panel is only 2 tests, namely heteroscedasticity and multicollinearity. So, is hetero a situation where there is an inequality of variance of residuals for all observation in the regression models, and multicollinearity, a situation where there is a perfect or close linear relationship between the independent variables in the regression model. 2 hypothesis testing. The first is t-test. Partially test the independent variable has an influence on the dependent variable. F-test simultaneously tests the independent variable has an influence on the dependent variable. R-quadrat test the extent to which the variation in the dependent variable can affect its variance is estimated by the coefficient of determined. Okay, thank you for the seminar proposal, Najwa Qisthina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.